Welcome to the prototypes example video. Prototypes are one of the only ways you can systematically evolve code. Without prototyping or using a methodology that's analogous to this in extreme programming or agile, you are basically building code via trial and error and hacking. So I'm going to stress that point because if this isn't stressed thoroughly in the thesis at the end of the project, it can be seen to be, as I've just said, hacking and trial and error code building. So let's highlight how you make sure that you understand how to evaluate, evolve, and demonstrate how to develop code correctly. Well, you've already started. If you have drawn up a features list, that's the start of a systematic process. The second step is the context diagram. Again, if you've understood your namespace is expanding, those two techniques will mean if you are building a glossary and a namespace dictionary, you will see that your namespaces have started to expand. Now with the context diagram, remember, we're looking at information flow in and out of the artifact. Then we move on to the use case diagram where we're looking at the tasks, the scenarios that are undertaken to data process the input data and then feed it out. So why is this important to prototyping less? Well, if you remember, we should have a set of deliverables by now. One will be the features list, one will be the context diagram, one will be the use case diagram, one will be the functional and non-functional tables, which will be a pair of tables. So why have we done it in this order, and why have we now come to the prototype list? Well, you shouldn't be starting to program, again if you are, you're undertaking programming using trial and error and hacking, without undertaking those previous deliverables and this deliverable. This deliverable now means that in your presentation, and you have to give a presentation in the first semester, you can state the methodology I'm using to develop the code is extreme programming or agile, which undertakes to use a systematic way of developing milestones or prototypes, and here are the prototypes that I've so far developed, evolving the artifact in complexity and complexity of the code structure and the data structure. So after that, let's have a look at some. Here's a typical one that was extracted from a student first presentation. You can see they've got titles of the prototypes, then the type of prototype. Most of the first ones you should do are command line. If you're wasting time building a UI, the first question you've got to ask yourself is why? When most of our projects in computer science are designed for algorithmics. Then you've got a description, then you've got a direct link to the functional and non-functional table. Let's look at another one. So here's a different prototype table, again 1 to 8 prototypes, saying what they're undertaking, and they've got functional and requirements and non-functional requirements that some are undertaking. Let's look at another one. Here's another one, again listing if they're command line or GUI. This one is a much better way of doing it. The GUIs are done at the very end. Lots of command line prototypes and lots of prototypes, and this is where they are in the first presentation. Another one here, again linking directly to the functional requirements, a description and what the milestone does, and another one here. So, as you can see from the prototypes tables, they are used directly in the first year presentation that you have to give. And it's a means of you learning a systematic way to develop code. Now the sad news is, unless you do this, like the rest of the world's programmers, sad to say, are still, even if they're 50 years into programming, developing code by trial and error and hacking. So again, I'm going to try and stress that these methodologies, systematic from software engineering, are used in agile textbooks. These methodologies, if you look at any good Agile engineering or Agile textbook, will show you that these are scribbled down by hand in a logbook, and lots of Agile textbooks now show you this. They don't show you the Visio prepared, the perfectly prepared diagrams. They showed you scribble diagrams that get you and the stakeholders understanding what's going on and making decisions. So I'll leave you with this. Thank you very much for watching the prototype video, and hopefully you've now got an idea of prototypes so you can start coding if you haven't already. And by the way, I suggest you do. If you don't start coding very soon, you'll end up in the situation where you're building artifacts, and the artifacts I've explained what they are in this video, but you're not coding. So remember, what you're meant to be doing is multiplexing. Writing in your logbook and drawing up the features list, context diagram, use case diagram, functional, non-functional table, and this prototype list, but also doing research and building code. So I'm going to leave you with that note. Thank you very much for listening.